I stood in Michigan Stadium holding a bouquet of daisies I'd bought for $3, watching 20,000 graduates in navy blue gowns celebrate the futures they were about to claim. Somewhere in that sea of mortarboards was my daughter Caroline, summa cum laude, headed to law school, the first person in our family to graduate from college. I'd sewn for 8 years to make this moment possible. 8 years of hospital scrubs and choir robes and restaurant uniforms, my fingers bleeding onto fabric at 2 a.m, my back screaming every time I stood up from that Singer sewing machine in our cramped living room on Packard Street. I didn't mind. She was worth every stitch, every sacrifice, every dream I'd buried so hers could bloom. My name is Janet Holloway. I'm 43 years old. I never got to go to college myself. Had to stay home when my father had a stroke 2 weeks before my own acceptance letter to the University of Michigan arrived. Full scholarship, I was going to study English. Maybe become a teacher. Maybe write. Instead, I worked at Woolworth's lunch counter and watched my dreams shrink down to the size of a 2-room apartment above a bakery. The smell of rye bread rising through the floorboards every morning like a prayer I couldn't quite finish. But Caroline was going to have everything I didn't. That's what I told myself when her father walked out on us when she was 6. That's what I told myself every time I said yes to another rush job, another impossible deadline, another night without sleep. She was brilliant, special, destined for more than I'd ever been. After the ceremony, I found her on the field, surrounded by her dormitory friends and their mothers, women in wool coats and real pearls who smelled like Chanel No. 5, and spoke with that clipped Grosse Pointe accent that meant money, breeding, belonging. I smiled, ready to be proud, ready to finally meet the people my daughter had been talking about for 4 years. That's when she opened her mouth. "Oh, this is my mother," Caroline said, her voice tinged with something I'd never heard before, something that made my stomach drop. "She barely finished high school. Does alterations from home. Honestly, she wouldn't even qualify to clean your houses." She laughed, a small, nervous laugh. And those women, those polished, perfect women, they laughed too. I stood there holding my $3 daisies, feeling 30 years of exhaustion and sacrifice curdle into something I couldn't name. Something harder than anger, deeper than hurt. I looked at my daughter, this girl I'd raised to be better than me, kinder than the world, and I barely recognized her. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't make a scene. I just leaned in close, so only she could hear, and whispered, "Then let them pay for your law school." And I walked away. I heard her call after me, "Mom, wait." But I didn't stop. I walked past the champagne tables and the families taking photographs, all the way to my rusty Impala baking in the parking lot. I sat there for 10 minutes, hands shaking, staring at nothing. Then I drove home, and when I got there, I looked at the envelope on my kitchen table, the one containing the check for $2,400. Caroline's first semester deposit for Michigan Law School. I'd been saving it for 2 years. The deadline was Monday, 3 days away. I picked it up, stared at my signature line, left it blank. Because here's what Caroline didn't know. I'd already been accepted to Michigan myself back in 1949. Same school she just graduated from. I'd gotten my letter, my scholarship, my chance, and I'd given it up to take care of my dying father and my 3 younger brothers, because that's what you do when you love someone. You sacrifice. You carry your cross without complaining. You make yourself small so they can grow. I'd never told her because I didn't want her to feel guilty. I wanted her to fly without carrying my regrets. But now, watching her mock the woman who'd given up everything so she could soar, I wasn't sure she deserved wings anymore. The phone rang all weekend. I didn't answer. On Sunday morning, I went to Mass at Our Lady of the Rosary, like I always did, and prayed for clarity. Father Brennan's homily was about the prodigal son, about forgiveness, about how sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let people face the consequences of their choices. Monday morning, Caroline showed up at my door at dawn, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her eyes red and swollen. "Mom," she said, "please, I need you. The deadline is today." I looked at my daughter, this stranger who used to be my whole world, and I had to decide, was I going to enable her to become someone cruel because it was easier than watching her struggle? Or was I going to love her enough to let her fall? The check sat on the table between us, unsigned, her entire future folded into an envelope I could mail with a single stamp. "Come in," I said. "We need to talk." What happened next would change both of our lives forever, because I was about to teach my daughter the hardest lesson I'd ever learned. That forgiveness doesn't mean enabling cruelty. That love sometimes looks like letting go. That sacrifice only matters if the person you're sacrificing for understands what it costs. And that sometimes, just sometimes, the bravest thing a mother can do is let her daughter learn what it means to be small, to be invisible, to understand the people she'd so casually dismissed. The question was, would she learn? Or would I lose her forever? The clock was ticking. The post office would close at 5, and I still hadn't signed the check. I'll create the opening chapter in an artifact now. This will be the first major section. 21,000 out 25,000 characters, told entirely in first person, establishing Janet's world, her relationship with Caroline, and building toward the graduation ceremony. I slipped the navy blue choir robe off my cutting table and held it up to the window light, checking the hem one last time. The stitches were invisible, just the way Reverend Morrison liked them. Outside, the March wind rattled the storm windows of our rental house on Packard Street, and I could hear Mrs. Chen next door yelling at her kids in Cantonese to come inside for dinner. I'd been doing this for 8 years now, sewing, mending, altering, taking in wedding dresses for girls who'd gained weight, letting out work pants for men who'd lost it. My Singer 401A hummed in the corner of our living room like a third heartbeat. Mine, Caroline's, and the machine's. The room smelled like fabric sizing and the chicken soup I'd left simmering on the stove. My name is Janet Holloway. I'm 43 years old, though some days I feel 60. I've got brown hair I keep pinned back in a bun because loose threads catch in it, and hands that look older than the rest of me. Calloused, the knuckles swollen from gripping scissors all day. I'm not a small woman. 5'7", broad-shouldered like my Polish grandmother. I used to be self-conscious about it until I realized these shoulders could carry more than most people's, and that turned out to be useful. This house, 412 Packard Street, isn't much. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen where the linoleum's peeling up by the sink. The landlord's been promising to fix the furnace for 3 winters now. But it's ours. Or it's been ours since Caroline was 6, and her father decided fatherhood wasn't for him anymore. I don't talk about Frank much. What's there to say? We met at a parish fish fry in 1954, got married at Our Lady of the Rosary 6 months later, had Caroline 9 months after that. He worked at the Ford plant in Ypsilanti. Good union job, decent pay. We weren't rich, but we were getting by. Then one Sunday in November 1962, he came home from 8 o'clock Mass, packed a duffel bag, and told me he'd met someone else, someone younger, someone who didn't smell like baby formula and exhaustion. He left $20 on the kitchen counter and drove off in our only car. I called my brother Michael in Detroit, borrowed $50, and bought the Singer from a pawn shop on Main Street the next week. I'd learned to sew from my mother. She'd worked in a garment factory before she had me, and I figured if I could make my own clothes, I could make money making other people's. I was right. Within a month, I had 5 regular customers. Within a year, I was turning people away. The money wasn't good exactly. I charged 50 cents to hem pants, $2 to take in a dress, $5 for a full alteration, But it added up. And more importantly, it meant I could be home when Caroline got off the school bus. I could help with homework. I could make sure she ate dinner and said her prayers and knew someone in this world thought she was worth everything. Because she is. Caroline's always been special. Even as a baby, she'd look at you with these serious gray eyes. Frank's eyes, unfortunately. Like she was trying to figure out how the whole world worked. She walked at 9 months, read at 4. By 3rd grade, her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, pulled me aside and said, "Mrs. Holloway, your daughter is going places. Make sure she gets there." So I did. When Caroline needed books, I sewed extra hours. When she wanted to join the debate team and needed a dress for competitions, I made her 3. When she got accepted to the University of Michigan with a partial scholarship, the University of Michigan, the same school I'd once dreamed of attending, I sat down and did the math. Tuition, room, board, books. Even with her scholarship, it was going to cost about $1,800 a year, $7,200 over 4 years. I was making maybe $3,000 a year from sewing. I took on more work. I started saying yes to the jobs I'd usually turn down. The wedding dresses that needed to be finished in 3 days. The restaurant uniforms that came in stacks of 20. I sewed until 2 in the morning most nights. My back started giving me trouble. I developed a tremor in my right hand from gripping the scissors. But every time I felt like quitting, I'd walk past Caroline's bedroom and see her hunched over her desk, studying by lamplight. And I'd think, she's going to make it. She's going to have the life I didn't. I never told her about my own acceptance letter. It came in April 1949, 3 weeks after my 18th birthday. I'd applied to Michigan on a whim, or maybe on a dare from my English teacher, Miss Kowalski, who said I wrote better essays than half the boys who'd gotten in on football scholarships. I didn't think I had a chance. My father drove a delivery truck. My mother worked nights at the hospital laundry. We lived in a 2-room apartment above a bakery on Division Street. But the letter came. Full scholarship, College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. I was going to study English, maybe become a teacher, maybe write. 2 weeks later, my father had a stroke. Massive. Left him paralyzed on the right side, unable to work. My mother couldn't afford to quit her job. We needed her income to keep the lights on, and I had 3 younger brothers, the youngest only 8 years old. So I stayed. I got a job at Woolworth's downtown, working the lunch counter. I took care of my father in the evenings, helped him eat, bathe, use the bathroom. I watched my brothers after school. I watched my dreams shrink down to the size of that apartment above the bakery. The smell of rye bread rising through the floorboards every morning. My father died 2 years later. By then it was too late. I was 20, working full-time, too exhausted to imagine starting over. I met Frank at that fish fry 6 months after the funeral, and I think part of me just wanted someone to take care of me for once. That didn't work out how I'd hoped, but I never regretted staying for my father. That's what you do. You take care of the people you love. You make sacrifices because that's what it means to be human, to be decent. That's what my mother taught me. That's what the sisters taught us in catechism. You carry your cross, and you don't complain about the weight. I folded the choir robe and set it in the basket by the door, ready for pickup. Then I checked the clock, 5:47 p.m. Caroline's train from Ann Arbor was due at 6:15. She was coming home for spring break, her last one before graduation in May. I stirred the soup, added more salt, sliced bread from the loaf I'd bought at Zingerman's. The good stuff, worth the splurge. I wanted everything to be nice. We didn't get many evenings together anymore. She'd been so busy this semester, so focused. Pre-law track, honors thesis, internship applications. The few times we talked on the phone, she sounded distracted. Tired. I told myself it was normal. She was 21, on the verge of everything. Of course she didn't have time for her mother. The front door opened at 6:32. Caroline came in carrying a leather suitcase I didn't recognize, expensive looking, with brass buckles, and wearing a wool coat I definitely hadn't made for her. "Hi, Mom," she said, and kissed my cheek quickly, already moving past me toward her bedroom. "Hi, honey. I made soup. You hungry?" "Maybe in a bit. I need to make some calls first." She disappeared into her room and closed the door. I heard her voice through the wall, bright and animated in a way it hadn't been with me. "Sloan! Oh my God, I know, right?" "No," she said, "yes. We're going to Mackinac Island for the weekend after graduation." I ladled soup into 2 bowls and sat down at the kitchen table alone. The clock ticked. The furnace rattled. I ate my dinner and tried not to feel like a stranger in my own home. Caroline emerged 20 minutes later, poured herself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. She'd changed into designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, neither of which I'd sent money for. "So," I said carefully, "how's everything going? Classes good?" "Yeah, fine. Busy." "Your thesis coming along?" I waited. She didn't elaborate. I got the invoice from the law school," I said, "for the deposit. It's due in April." Her face brightened. "Oh yeah, I meant to talk to you about that. So I got into Michigan law, obviously, but I also got into Georgetown and NYU. And Sloane's mom, Mrs. Whitmore, she's on the alumni board at NYU, and she said if I go there, she might be able to help me get a clerkship after..." "Caroline," I set down my spoon, "we can't afford NYU. You know that. Michigan's giving you in-state tuition. We talked about this." "I know, but..." "No buts. I've been saving for Michigan. $2,400 for the first semester deposit. That's what we have." She crossed her arms. "So I'm supposed to just give up a better opportunity because you decided what I can and can't do?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'm just saying maybe if you'd planned better, or if you had a real job instead of sewing curtains in the living room, we'd have more options." The words hit me like cold water. I sat there, staring at my daughter, trying to find her in this stranger's face. "A real job," I repeated quietly. She had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "You know what I mean. I'm not saying you didn't try, but..." "Caroline Marie Holloway." My voice came out harder than I intended. "I have sewn 60 hours a week for 8 years to pay for your education. I've done that so you wouldn't have to take loans. So you could graduate debt-free and have choices. And now you're telling me it's not enough because your friend's mother dangles something shiny in front of you? That's not fair." "No," I said. "What's not fair is you acting like I'm the problem." She rolled her eyes, actually rolled them, and pushed off the counter. "Whatever. I'm going to bed." She left. I sat at the table until the soup went cold. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind howl through the eaves, and wondered where I'd gone wrong. I'd tried so hard to raise her with values, gratitude, humility, respect. Every Sunday we went to Mass at Our Lady of the Rosary. I taught her to pray, to give thanks, to remember that everything we had was a gift, not a guarantee. But somewhere along the way, she'd started spending more time with girls who summered on Mackinac Island and wintered in Aspen. Girls whose fathers were lawyers and doctors and auto executives. Girls who didn't know what it was like to choose between fixing the furnace and buying groceries. And maybe, God, maybe I'd encouraged it. Maybe I'd pushed her so hard toward that world that I'd forgotten to teach her how to stay grounded in this one. The rest of the week was tense. Caroline spent most of her time out with friends, girls who picked her up in their parents' Cadillacs and brought her back smelling like expensive perfume. When she was home, she barely spoke to me. I kept sewing, kept my head down, kept telling myself it was just a phase. On Friday, she came into the living room while I was hemming a pair of work pants for Mr. Kowalski from the auto shop. "Mom," she said, "I need money for a dress. I didn't look up from my stitching. What kind of dress? For graduation. Everyone's getting something nice. You have 3 nice dresses. I made them for you. I can't wear something homemade, Mom. It's embarrassing. I stopped sewing, set down the pants, looked at her. Embarrassing, I said flatly. She shifted her weight. You know what I mean. No, I said, I don't. Explain it to me. Forget it. She turned to leave. Caroline. She stopped, but didn't turn around. When did I become something you're ashamed of? Her shoulders tensed. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Might say she didn't mean it. Might remember who I was and who she was, and all the years we'd struggled together in this little house with the peeling wallpaper and the broken furnace. But she didn't. I'm not ashamed, she said quietly. I want more. Is that so wrong? And then she left. I sat there with Mr. Kowalski's work pants in my lap, and for the first time in 8 years, I cried. The next morning was Saturday. Caroline left early to meet her friends in Ann Arbor. I went to confession at Our Lady of the Rosary. Father Brennan was hearing. A kind man in his 60s with a thick Irish brogue and hands that always smelled like pipe tobacco. I knelt in the dark booth and said, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." It's been 2 weeks since my last confession. Go on, child. I'm angry, I said, at my daughter, and I don't know if it's righteous or sinful. Tell me. So I did. I told him everything. The graduation dress, the dismissive comments, the sense that I'd become an inconvenience in my own child's life. And when I finished, I waited for him to tell me to forgive her, to pray for patience, to remember that pride is a sin and humility a virtue. Instead, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Janet, do you know the story of the prodigal son?" "Of course. And do you remember how the father responds when the son returns? He welcomes him, throws a feast." "Yes, but do you remember what happens before that? The son has to leave. He has to squander his inheritance. He has to eat with pigs and lose everything before he understands what he had. The father's love didn't prevent the son's fall. It waited for him on the other side of it." I pressed my forehead against the screen. "So, I'm supposed to just let her fail?" "I'm saying sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let people face the consequences of their choices. Forgiveness doesn't mean enabling cruelty. It means believing they can be better." I left the church with my penance, 3 Hail Marys and a prayer for wisdom. But Father Brennan's words stayed with me. The weeks passed. April came, rainy and cold. The law school deposit deadline loomed. I wrote the check, signed it, sealed it in an envelope, and then I left it on the kitchen table, unsent. Caroline called twice, short conversations. She was busy with finals, busy with her thesis defense, busy preparing for graduation. She didn't ask about the deposit. Maybe she assumed I'd sent it. Maybe she didn't care. May arrived. Graduation was scheduled for the first Saturday of the month at Michigan Stadium. Caroline sent me a ticket. 1, for the ceremony. No invitation to any of the pre-parties or dinners. Just the ceremony. I pressed my yellow dress, the one I'd worn to her high school graduation, the one I'd sewn from a Simplicity pattern in 1970. It was outdated now, but it was clean and it fit. I couldn't afford anything else. The morning of graduation, I woke at 5 a.m. Couldn't sleep. I made coffee, sat at the table, and stared at the envelope with the law school check. $2,400. 2 years of late nights and aching hands. I picked it up, turned it over, put it in my purse. I drove to Ann Arbor in my rusty '68 Impala, the one with the passenger door that didn't open from the outside, and the radio that only played AM stations. The highway was crowded with families in station wagons and luxury sedans, everyone heading to the same place. I parked in a lot a mile from the stadium and walked. Michigan Stadium is massive. Over 100,000 seats, they say, though they'd only filled about 20,000 for graduation. The field was covered in rows of folding chairs, and the graduates sat in perfect navy blue lines, mortarboards gleaming in the late morning sun. I found my seat in the upper section, nosebleeds as expected, and watched the ceremony begin. They called names alphabetically. I waited, held my breath, and then Caroline Marie Holloway, Bachelor of Arts, summa cum laude. She walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, accepted her diploma. I stood and clapped so hard my palms stung. She didn't look up at the stands. But I didn't care. She'd done it. My girl had done it. After the ceremony, I made my way down to the field, following the crowd of families toward the graduates. The lawn was chaos. People hugging, crying, taking photographs. I spotted Caroline near the south end zone, surrounded by her friends, the same girls I'd heard her talk about for months. Sloane, Bridget, Victoria, and their mothers. I recognized them immediately. They looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Wool coats, silk scarves, pearls that caught the light. They stood in a loose circle, champagne flutes in hand, laughing at something one of them had said. I walked toward them, clutching my bouquet of daisies, 6 stems for $3 from the Kroger on Stadium Boulevard. Caroline saw me coming. Her smile faltered. "Mom," she said, "you made it." "Of course I did, honey." I held out the flowers. "Congratulations." She took them, barely looked at them. "Thanks. These are my friends, Sloane, Bridget, Victoria, and this is Mrs. Whitmore, Mrs. Ashford, and Mrs. Kensington." The women turned to look at me, polite smiles, appraising eyes. "Oh, how lovely to meet you," Mrs. Whitmore said, extending a gloved hand. "Caroline's told us so much about you." I shook her hand. "It's nice to meet you too. I'm Janet." "Janet," Mrs. Ashford said, her voice warm but distant. "What do you do, dear?" Before I could answer, Caroline spoke. "Oh, my mother does alterations," she said lightly. "Works from home. She didn't go to college or anything. Barely finished high school, actually." The air shifted. I felt it. The way their smiles became a little more fixed, a little more pitying. "How industrious," Mrs. Kensington said. And then Caroline laughed, a small nervous laugh. "Honestly," she said, "she probably wouldn't even qualify to clean your houses." The mothers laughed too. Not meanly, maybe. Just casually, like it was a joke, like I wasn't standing right there. I looked at my daughter, at this girl I'd raised, this girl I'd sacrificed everything for, and I didn't recognize her. I didn't yell, didn't make a scene. I just leaned in close, so only she could hear. "Then let them pay for your law school." And I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard her voice. "Mom, wait." But I didn't stop. I walked through the crowd, past the families taking pictures, past the vendors selling Michigan pennants, all the way to my car in the distant parking lot. I sat in the driver's seat for 10 minutes, staring at the steering wheel, my hands shaking. Then I drove home, and when I got there, I took the envelope with the law school check out of my purse, set it on the kitchen table, and left it there, unsigned. The phone started ringing at 7 o'clock that evening. I was sitting at my sewing machine, working on a baptism gown for the Martinez family, delicate white cotton with hand-embroidered roses along the hem. My hands were shaking so badly, I'd already pricked my finger twice. The blood had stained the fabric. I'd have to start over. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. I didn't answer. It rang 12 times before it stopped. Then 5 minutes later, it started again. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and unplugged it from the wall. The silence that followed felt like a held breath, like the moment before a storm breaks. I stood there in my kitchen, this kitchen where I'd fed my daughter breakfast before school every morning for 16 years, where I'd helped her with algebra homework at this same Formica table, where I'd celebrated every good grade and every small victory, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. The check sat where I'd left it. White envelope, blue ink. Caroline's future folded into a rectangle I could hold in one hand. I picked it up, turned it over. My signature line was still blank. The deadline was Monday. Tomorrow was Sunday. The post office would be closed. If I was going to send it, I'd have to drive to Ann Arbor first thing Monday morning and deliver it to the law school office in person. I set it back down. Then I went to bed. Even though it was barely 8 o'clock, I didn't want to think anymore. Didn't want to feel. I just wanted to disappear into sleep and maybe wake up in a different life where my daughter still loved me. But sleep didn't come. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, and thought about all the moments I must have missed. All the signs that Caroline was drifting away from the girl I'd raised. When had it started? Freshman year, when she joined that sorority and came home talking about legacy members and alumni connections. Sophomore year, when she started correcting my grammar at the dinner table. Last Christmas, when she'd seemed embarrassed that I'd given her homemade gifts while her friends exchanged cashmere and designer handbags. Or maybe it started earlier. Maybe it started the day I decided to sacrifice everything so she could have more. Maybe I taught her, without meaning to, that my life was worth less than hers, that my dreams didn't matter as much, that I was the scaffolding, not the building. At some point, I must have fallen asleep because I woke to pounding on the front door. The clock read 6:47 a.m., Sunday morning. Pale light filtered through the curtains. The pounding continued, frantic and desperate. I pulled on my bathrobe and walked to the door. Through the small window, I could see Caroline standing on the porch, still in yesterday's clothes, her hair disheveled, her face blotchy with tears. I opened the door. "Mom," she said immediately, pushing past me into the house. "Mom, please, we need to talk. I've been calling. Why didn't you answer? I drove all night. It's 6 in the morning, Caroline." "I know. I'm sorry, but the deposit is due tomorrow and I need to know if you sent it because if you didn't, I need to figure something else out." And I closed the door, walked to the kitchen, plugged the phone back in, put the kettle on for coffee. She followed me, talking the whole way. And Sloane's mom said maybe her father could co-sign a loan, but that would mean owing them money, and I don't want to do that. And I called the law school, but they said the deadline is firm. They won't extend it. And Mom, please, I know I messed up yesterday. I know what I said was awful, but I didn't mean it. I was just nervous and trying to impress them, I said quietly, spooning instant coffee into 2 mugs. "By humiliating me." She stopped talking. The kettle began to whistle. "Mom, do you know what I did yesterday after I left? I poured the hot water, watched the coffee granules dissolve into brown. I drove home. I came into this house, and I sat at my sewing machine and tried to work. But my hands were shaking so badly, I bled all over Mrs. Martinez's baptism gown. Ruined it. I'll have to buy new fabric and start over. That's $40 I don't have, Caroline. $40 because I couldn't stop shaking after my own daughter told a group of strangers that I'm not good enough to clean their toilets." "I didn't say that exactly." "You said I wouldn't qualify to clean their houses, in front of them, while I was standing right there holding flowers I bought for you." I handed her a mug. "Sit down." She sat. I stayed standing. "I need to tell you something," I said. "Something I've never told you before." She wrapped her hands around the mug, not drinking, waiting. "In 1949, I was 18 years old. I just graduated from Ann Arbor High School. I wasn't valedictorian like you. I was 5th in my class, but I was good enough. And I loved books, loved writing. My English teacher, Miss Kowalski, she encouraged me to apply to the University of Michigan. I didn't think I'd get in. We were poor, Caroline. My father drove a truck. My mother worked nights doing hospital laundry. We lived in 2 rooms above a bakery." I paused, took a sip of coffee. It was bitter. I hadn't added sugar. "But I got in. Full scholarship. College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. I was going to study English. Maybe become a teacher, maybe write. I got the acceptance letter in April, and I thought my life was about to begin. Caroline's face had gone very still. 2 weeks later, my father had a stroke. Massive. Left side paralyzed. He couldn't work. My mother couldn't quit her job. We needed the money. And I had 3 younger brothers. The youngest was 8. Someone had to take care of them. Someone had to stay. Mom, I held up a hand. I'm not finished. I stayed. I got a job at Woolworth's downtown. I took care of my father. I watched my brothers. I watched the September deadline come and go. I watched other girls from my class pack their trunks and leave for college, while I made tuna sandwiches and changed bedpans. My father died 2 years later. By then it was too late. I was 20. Too exhausted to imagine starting over. I set down my mug, looked at her directly. I never told you because I didn't want you to feel guilty. I wanted you to fly without carrying my regrets. I wanted you to have everything I didn't. And I've spent 8 years. 8 years, Caroline. Sewing until my hands bled so you could walk across that stage yesterday. Debt-free, so you could have choices I never had. Her eyes were filled with tears now, but I couldn't stop. And yesterday, you looked at me like I was nothing. Like those 8 years meant nothing. Like I was an embarrassment you had to explain away to women who wouldn't know sacrifice if it stitched their hems. Mom, I'm so sorry. Are you? I asked. Or are you sorry you got caught? Sorry because now you need something from me? She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not fair, she whispered. No, I agreed. It's not. But neither is what you did. We sat in silence. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, I heard Mrs. Chen's rooster crowing. She kept chickens in her backyard even though the city ordinances said she wasn't supposed to. Nobody complained because she shared the eggs. Finally, Caroline spoke, her voice small. Did you send the check? No. Her face went white. Mom, the deadline is tomorrow, I know. So you're not going to send it? You're going to let me lose my spot because I said something stupid? I leaned back against the counter, crossed my arms. I'm trying to decide what kind of mother I want to be. The kind who enables her daughter to become someone cruel because it's easier than watching her struggle. Or the kind who loves her enough to let her face consequences. Consequences? Mom, this is my future. Yes, I said. It is. And you need to decide what kind of future you want. One built on disrespect and entitlement, or one built on something better. She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the linoleum. I can't believe you're doing this. Over one mistake, one stupid comment. It wasn't one comment, Caroline. It's been building for months. The way you talk to me, the way you talk about me. Yesterday was just the first time you did it in public. That's not true, isn't it? Last Christmas, you told me not to wear my church coat to your dormitory holiday party because it looked too working class. In March, you asked me not to call you during the day because your friends might overhear and think it was weird that I check in. 2 weeks ago, you told me you couldn't come home for Easter because you were going to the Whitmore's house in Grosse Pointe. And when I said I'd miss you, you said, Mom, it's just Easter, it's not a big deal. Her mouth opened, then closed. It's a big deal to me, I said quietly. I raised you to value family, to value sacrifice, to understand that money and status don't make you better than anyone else. And somewhere along the way, you forgot that. Or you decided it didn't matter. She sank back into the chair, put her head in her hands. I don't know who I am anymore, she said, her voice muffled. I'm trying so hard to fit in with these girls, to prove I belong there. And I don't know how to do that without pretending I don't exist. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared that if they know where I really come from, they'll see me differently. They'll treat me like I don't belong. And what if they do? I asked. What if they look down on you because your mother sews for a living? What if they decide you're not good enough for their country clubs and their summer houses? Will you abandon yourself to keep their approval? Will you abandon me? I don't want to abandon you. Then stop being ashamed of me. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and final. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, and I saw, for just a moment, the little girl she used to be. The one who'd come home from first grade crying because a boy said her lunch smelled weird, and I'd held her and told her that kielbasa was nothing to be ashamed of, that our Polish heritage was something to be proud of. The one who'd asked me, at age 10, why her father left, and I'd told her the truth, that sometimes people make selfish choices, but that didn't mean she was unlovable. When had I stopped being enough for her? I'm going to Mass, I said, breaking the silence. It starts at 8. You're welcome to come with me, or you can stay here. But when I get back, we're going to have a real conversation about what happens next. I left her sitting at the kitchen table and went to get dressed. Our Lady of the Rosary sits on the corner of State Street and Hill, a small brick building with a white steeple and stained glass windows that cast colored light across the pews when the sun hits them right. I've been attending Mass there since I moved to Ann Arbor in 1954. It's where Caroline was baptized, where she made her first communion, where we've sat together every Sunday for 17 years, in the same pew, 4th row from the back, left side. I arrived early. The church was nearly empty. Old Mrs. Kowalski was lighting candles at the side altar, and Mr. Chen, Mrs. Chen's husband, was reading his missal in the front row. I dipped my fingers in the holy water, crossed myself, and slid into our usual pew. The silence in a church is different from other silences. It's not empty. It's full of prayers spoken and unspoken, of grief and gratitude, of people trying to make sense of their lives before God. I knelt, folded my hands, and tried to pray, but the words wouldn't come. I just kept seeing Caroline's face yesterday, the casual cruelty in her laugh, the way she'd looked right through me. The door opened behind me. Footsteps. Someone slid into the pew beside me. I looked over. Caroline. She'd changed clothes, put on a simple blue dress I'd made for her 2 years ago. She knelt beside me, hands folded, eyes forward. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Father Brennan entered from the sacristy in his green vestments, and Mass began. The responses I'd memorized as a child came automatically. And with your spirit. Thanks be to God. Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word, and my soul shall be healed. The gospel reading was from Luke, the prodigal son, the same reading Father Brennan had referenced in confession. He read it slowly, his Irish accent softening the words. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. I felt Caroline shift beside me. Father Brennan's homily was short. He talked about forgiveness, not as weakness, but as strength. About how love doesn't mean accepting harm, but believing in the possibility of change. About how the father in the story didn't chase after his son, didn't enable his destruction, but waited for the moment when the son could see his own mistakes and choose to come home. Sometimes, Father Brennan said, his voice echoing in the small church, the most loving thing we can do is let people fall, not because we want them to suffer, but because we trust they're strong enough to rise again. And when they do, when they come back humbled and honest, we run to meet them. When communion came, Caroline and I walked to the altar together. We received the host. We knelt and prayed. And when Mass ended, we walked out into the bright May morning together, blinking in the sunlight. Can we go somewhere? Caroline asked. To talk? We drove to Gallup Park in my Impala. The Huron River was high with spring runoff, muddy and swift. We found a bench near the water and sat down. A family was flying a kite in the open field behind us. Kids' laughter carried on the breeze. "I've been thinking," Caroline said finally, "about what you said, about who I've been becoming." I waited. "You're right. I've been ashamed, not just of you, but of myself, of where we come from. I've spent 4 years trying to erase every trace of Packard Street, every reminder that I'm not like Sloane or Bridget or Victoria. And I thought if I could just fit in perfectly enough, I'd belong. But I don't. I never will, because I'm not them. I'm the daughter of a woman who gave up everything so I could have a chance." Her voice cracked. She took a shaky breath. "I don't know how to fix this, Mom. I don't know how to make it right. But I need you to know. I see you now. I see what you've done. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked out at the river, watched the current pull branches and debris downstream, everything moving forward whether it wanted to or not. "I'm going to send the check," I said. Her head whipped toward me. "What?" "I'm going to send the check. You'll start law school in the fall." "Mom." "But," I continued, "there are conditions." She went very still. "You're going to work, part-time, at least 20 hours a week. I don't care where. A library, a restaurant, a retail store. Somewhere you have to serve people. Somewhere you have to be tired and invisible and overlooked. Somewhere that reminds you what it's like to work for every dollar." "Okay," she said immediately. "And you're going to volunteer. Legal aid, public defense, something that puts you in front of people who can't afford fancy lawyers. Because if you're going to take my money to become a lawyer, you're going to be the kind of lawyer who remembers where she came from." "I will. I promise. And one more thing." I turned to look at her directly. "You're going to call me every Sunday. Not because I'm checking up on you. Because you want to. Because I matter to you. And if I ever hear you dismiss me, or diminish me, or pretend I'm something less than the woman who raised you, I will cut you off completely. No more money. No more support. You'll be on your own. Do you understand?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I understand." "Good." We sat in silence for a while. The kite dipped and soared above us. The river rushed past. "I still have that acceptance letter," I said quietly. "From Michigan. I kept it in a box in my closet. Sometimes I take it out and wonder what would have happened if I'd gone. What kind of person I'd have become." "Would you have been happier?" Caroline asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe. Maybe not. But I know I wouldn't trade you for anything. Not even that letter. Not even those dreams. You're my daughter, Caroline. My miracle. And I need you to be worthy of the sacrifice." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I put my arm around her, and we sat like that, mother and daughter, flawed and forgiven and trying, while the world moved around us. Monday morning I drove to Ann Arbor. Caroline rode with me. We didn't talk much. The radio played softly. Paul Simon singing about mother and child reunion. The law school admissions office was in Hutchins Hall, a stern brick building with tall windows and marble floors. We walked in together. I handed the envelope to the receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes. "Just under the deadline," she said with a smile. "Cutting it close." "Yes," I said. "We had some things to work out." She stamped the envelope, logged it in her ledger. "You're all set, Miss Holloway. We'll see you in September." Outside on the steps of Hutchins Hall, Caroline turned to me. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." I cupped her face in my hands. These hands that had sewn thousands of seams, that had bled and cramped and worked without rest. "Make me proud," I said. "Not by being successful, by being good." "I will." I kissed her forehead and let her go. As I drove home alone, the trees blurring green outside my window, I thought about Father Brennan's homily, about the father running to meet his son, about the moment when love and accountability converge, When you realize that letting someone fall isn't cruelty, it's trust. Trust that they'll find their way back. Trust that they're strong enough to rise. Caroline had fallen, but she'd gotten back up. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most important lesson I'd ever taught her. 3 years later, I stood in the back of Washtenaw County Circuit Court, watching my daughter defend a woman I'd never met. It was a Tuesday morning in September 1977. The air conditioning in the courtroom wasn't working properly, and I could feel sweat pooling at the small of my back beneath my good navy dress, a new one I'd finally bought from Hudson's department store downtown, with money Caroline had insisted I take from her first paycheck. The judge looked tired, the prosecutor looked bored, and Caroline looked like she'd been awake for 3 days straight. She probably had been. The defendant was a young woman named Maria Santos, 24 years old, with a 2-year-old son, and no husband. She'd been caught shoplifting diapers and formula from the Kroger on Stadium Boulevard, $67 worth of merchandise. The store manager had pressed charges, retail fraud, 3rd degree, maximum penalty, 93 days in jail, and a $500 fine. I knew all this because Caroline had told me during our Sunday phone call, the weekly calls we'd maintained religiously for 3 years now. She'd taken the case through the Washtenaw County Public Defender's Office, where she'd been working since graduating from Michigan law that May. She'd passed the bar exam in July. This was her 9th case. She hadn't won any of the previous 8. "All rise," the bailiff intoned. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. We all stood. Judge Morrison entered, a stern-looking black woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She'd been on the bench for 15 years, Caroline had told me. Fair but tough, not inclined toward mercy without reason. "Be seated," the judge said. "Case number 773492, People v. Santos. Ms. Holloway, I understand you're representing the defendant?" Caroline stood. She wore a gray suit I'd made for her. She'd asked me to specifically, after that conversation in Gallup Park, said she wanted to walk into court wearing something her mother had made with her own hands. Wanted to remember where she came from every time she stood before a judge. "Yes, Your Honor. Caroline Holloway for the defense. And Mr. Patterson for the people. Let's proceed with opening statements." The prosecutor went first. He was efficient, economical, laid out the facts. Maria Santos entered Kroger on August 12th at approximately 3:15 p.m. Security footage showed her concealing items in her purse and a shopping bag. She left without paying. Store security stopped her in the parking lot. She confessed immediately. Open and shut case. The people recommended 60 days in jail and restitution. Then it was Caroline's turn. She stood slowly, gathering a stack of papers, walked to the center of the courtroom. For a moment, she just stood there, silent, and I could see her hands trembling slightly. Then she took a breath and began. "Your Honor, my client doesn't dispute the facts as presented by the prosecution. She took items from Kroger without paying. She broke the law. But the law doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in the context of people's lives. And I'd like to tell you about my client's life, if I may." Judge Morrison gestured. "Proceed." "Maria Santos came to this country from Mexico 7 years ago. She was 17. She came legally on a work visa to pick fruit in the orchards outside Ypsilanti. She met a man, an American citizen, and they married. She became pregnant. She thought she'd found stability. Then her husband left. Just walked out one day when their son was 6 months old. Didn't leave money. Didn't leave a forwarding address. Just disappeared." Caroline's voice was steady now, growing stronger. "Maria works 2 jobs. She cleans offices at night for a janitorial company. $4 an hour. No benefits. During the day, she watches children in her apartment for neighbors who also work. $2 per child. Cash only. She makes approximately $600 a month. Her rent is $250. Utilities are $40. She has a car payment of $85 because she needs the car to get to both jobs. That leaves her with $225 a month for food, diapers, formula, clothing, medical care, and everything else she and her son need to survive. I watched the judge's face. It remained impassive, but she was listening. On August 12th, her son had a fever. She'd already missed one day of work that week to take him to the free clinic. If she missed another, she'd lose the night cleaning job. Her supervisor had made that clear, so she went to work. She left her son with a neighbor who agreed to watch him for free. But that meant she owed the neighbor a favor, which meant she'd have to watch the neighbor's children for free the following week, which meant less money. Caroline paused, set down one piece of paper, picked up another. That afternoon, her son's fever broke. The neighbor called to say he was better. Maria felt like she could finally breathe. She finished her shift at 4 a.m., went home, slept for 3 hours, and then had to buy supplies. Diapers, formula, the necessities. She went to Kroger with $47 in her wallet. She put $67 worth of items in her cart because she was exhausted and not thinking clearly. When she got to the register and realized her mistake, she panicked. She didn't put the items back. She didn't ask for help. She just took them. Because the alternative was watching her baby cry from hunger or sit in a dirty diaper for hours while she figured out where to find another $20. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, while I sympathize with the defendant's circumstances, poverty doesn't justify theft. If we excuse every crime committed by someone in financial distress, I'm not asking you to excuse it. Caroline interrupted, then caught herself. My apologies, Your Honor. May I continue? Judge Morrison nodded. Caroline turned slightly, so she was addressing both the judge and the prosecutor. I'm not asking for the charges to be dismissed. I'm asking for context. I'm asking this court to see my client as a human being, a mother doing her best in impossible circumstances. She made a mistake, a desperate mistake, and she's willing to face consequences. But those consequences should be proportional and rehabilitative, not punitive and destructive. She picked up another paper. If Maria Santos spends 60 days in jail, she loses both her jobs. She loses her apartment. She loses custody of her son, who would go into the foster system. And when she gets out, she'll have a criminal record that makes it nearly impossible to find work. She'll be worse off than she was before. She'll be more likely to re-offend. And her son will grow up without his mother. Caroline's voice softened. Your Honor, I'm asking this court to impose probation instead of jail time, community service, mandatory financial counseling, restitution to Kroger, paid in installments she can actually afford. Give her a chance to prove she's more than the worst thing she's ever done. Give her a chance to be the mother her son needs. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes. Mr. Patterson, do the people wish to respond? The prosecutor stood. He looked uncomfortable. Your Honor, the people maintain that jail time is appropriate. However, we would be amenable to a reduced sentence. 30 days, with credit for time served. Maria Santos had spent 2 nights in jail after her arrest, before Caroline's office posted bail. Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Ms. Santos, please stand. Maria stood. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She wore a borrowed dress that was too big for her. Her hands shook. Ms. Santos, Judge Morrison said, I've been on this bench for a long time. I've seen hundreds of theft cases, and I can usually tell the difference between someone who steals because they want to and someone who steals because they don't see another option. You strike me as the latter. Maria's eyes filled with tears. However, the law is the law. You broke it. There must be consequences. I'm sentencing you to 90 days in jail. Maria's knees buckled. Caroline caught her arm. Suspended, pending successful completion of 2 years probation. During that time, you will perform 120 hours of community service. You will attend financial counseling sessions provided by Catholic Social Services. And you will pay restitution to Kroger in the amount of $67 at a rate of $5 per month until the debt is satisfied. The judge looked at Maria directly. I'm giving you a chance, Miss Santos. Don't make me regret it. If you violate the terms of your probation, you'll serve the full 90 days. Do you understand? Yes, Maria whispered. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Outside the courthouse, in the parking lot, Caroline and Maria stood talking. I hung back, watching. Maria was crying, thanking Caroline over and over, holding her hands. Caroline said something I couldn't hear, and Maria nodded, wiped her face, and walked toward an old station wagon where a toddler was strapped in a car seat. I walked over to my daughter. That was good, I said. Really good. She turned, startled. Mom, I didn't know you were here. You told me about the case on Sunday. I wanted to see you in action. She smiled, tired but genuine. We got lucky. Judge Morrison has a reputation for being compassionate in first offense cases. It wasn't luck. You gave her a reason to be compassionate. You told a story. You made Maria human. We walked toward my car. I'd upgraded to a '75 Dodge Dart the previous year, after the Impala finally gave out. Caroline walked beside me, still carrying her briefcase, her heels clicking on the asphalt. I've been thinking about something, she said. Something you said 3 years ago, at Gallup Park, about being worthy of the sacrifice. I remember. I don't know if I'll ever feel like I am. Worthy, I mean. But I'm trying. Every case, every client. I'm trying to be the person you raised me to be. I stopped walking, turned to face her. Caroline, you don't have to earn my love. You already have it. You always will. What you're earning now is your own self-respect, and that's more important. She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. I'm so tired, Mom. I'm working 60, 70 hours a week. The pay is terrible. Most of my clients lose anyway, and sometimes I wonder if I'm making any difference at all. You made a difference to Maria Santos today. One person, out of thousands who need help. One person, I repeated. That's how change happens. One person at a time. One choice at a time. You can't save everyone, honey, but you can show up for the people right in front of you. That's what I tried to teach you. That's what matters. She nodded, wiped her eyes. Do you have time for lunch? My treat. Always. We went to Zingerman's Deli. Her choice. It was crowded, full of university students and downtown workers on their lunch breaks. We ordered sandwiches at the counter, corned beef for her, turkey for me, and found a small table by the window. So, she said, picking at her sandwich, I need to tell you something. My stomach tightened. What? It's good news, I promise. Or at least, I think it's good news. I got offered a job. That's wonderful. Where? Here, in Ann Arbor. A small firm that does family law and civil rights cases. It's not much more money than the public defender's office, but it's more stable. Better hours. Room to grow. I waited. There was something else. I could hear it in her voice. But I'd be turning down another offer, she continued. From Sloane's father. He has a corporate firm in Detroit. Big clients, big money. He said he'd start me at $40,000 a year. I nearly choked on my sandwich. $40,000? I know. It's almost triple what I'm making now. I could pay off my loans, help you more. Maybe even buy a house eventually. But you're not going to take it. She shook her head. No, I'm not. Why not? She looked out the window, watching people pass by on the sidewalk. Students with backpacks, mothers pushing strollers, an old man walking a dog. Because that's not why I went to law school. I didn't spend 3 years learning how to help people so I could spend the next 30 helping corporations avoid taxes. And because, she looked back at me, because I don't want to become the person I was at graduation again, the person who valued money and status more than integrity. I reached across the table, took her hand. I'm proud of you, even though I'll probably never be rich. Especially because you'll probably never be rich. Money's easy to count. Character isn't. We finished our lunch and walked back to the parking lot together. The September air was crisp, the leaves just starting to turn. Caroline had parked her car, a used Honda Civic she'd bought with her bar exam graduation money, next to mine. "Mom," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever regret it? Staying for Grandpa, giving up your scholarship?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. Sometimes, I admitted. I wonder what would have happened, who I would have been. But regret, no. Because staying taught me something that college never could have. It taught me that love is a verb. It's not a feeling. It's a choice you make every day. Choose to show up. Choose to sacrifice. Choose to put someone else's needs before your own. And that's the most important thing I've ever learned. Is that why you do it? The sewing? Even though it's hard on your body. I do it because it's honest work. Because I'm good at it. Because it provides for us. And because every stitch is a prayer. That sounds corny, I know, but it's true. Every time I thread that needle, I'm praying for you. For your future. For the life I hope you'll have. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. You're my daughter. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. Flawed and human and trying your best. That's all any of us can do. She hugged me then tight and long. And I held her the way I'd held her when she was small. When the world felt too big. And she needed to know someone had her. That she wasn't alone. I love you, Mom, she whispered. I love you too, baby. The years that followed weren't always easy. Caroline worked long hours at the family law firm. She took cases other lawyers wouldn't touch. Messy divorces, contentious custody battles, domestic violence situations. She came home exhausted most nights. But she showed up. Every day she showed up. She called me every Sunday without fail. Sometimes we talked for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. She told me about her cases, the ones she won and the ones she lost. She asked my advice about things that had nothing to do with law. How to comfort a client whose child was in the hospital. What to say to a woman leaving an abusive marriage. Where to find resources for families in crisis. And I kept sewing. My hands got worse. Arthritis settled into my knuckles, made the fine work harder. But I adapted. I took on simpler projects. Curtains instead of wedding dresses. Hemming instead of tailoring. My customer base changed too. More immigrants, more working families. People who needed someone who wouldn't judge them for wearing the same coat for 5 winters or patching their children's clothes instead of buying new. In 1979, Caroline met a man named David Chen, Mrs. Chen's nephew, back in Ann Arbor to finish his engineering degree after serving in Vietnam. He was quiet, kind, scarred in ways that weren't always visible. They dated for a year before he proposed. She brought him to Sunday dinner at my house every week, and I watched them together. The way he listened when she talked about work. The way she gentled him when he got lost in dark memories. The way they both seemed to understand that love wasn't about perfection, but about showing up for each other anyway. They got married at Our Lady of the Rosary in June 1980. I made Caroline's wedding dress. Simple white linen with lace at the cuffs. Nothing fancy. She cried when she first tried it on. It's perfect, Mom. You're perfect. I wasn't perfect, but I'd done my best. And sometimes, that's enough. In the fall of 1982, Caroline called me on a Tuesday. Not our usual Sunday. My heart jumped. Tuesday calls meant something was wrong. Mom, she said when I answered, can you come to Ann Arbor, to my office? I need you to meet someone. Is everything okay? Yes, better than okay. Please, can you come? I drove there immediately, worry gnawing at my stomach. Her office was in a small brick building on 4th Avenue, above a bookstore. I climbed the narrow stairs and found her waiting in the reception area with a teenage girl. The girl was maybe 15, 16 years old, Hispanic, with long dark hair and frightened eyes. She wore jeans and a University of Michigan sweatshirt that was too big for her, and she kept her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something in. "Mom," Caroline said. "This is Rosa. Rosa, this is my mother, Janet." I shook the girl's hand gently. "Hello, Rosa." "Hi," she whispered. Caroline gestured for us to sit. "Rosa's mother is Maria Santos. Do you remember that name?" It took me a moment. Then it clicked. "The shoplifting case? 3 years ago? 5 years ago, actually. But yes." Caroline turned to Rosa. "Rosa, would you mind waiting in the conference room for a few minutes? I need to talk to my mom privately." Rosa nodded and disappeared down the hall. Once she was gone, Caroline leaned forward. "Maria died last month. Heart attack. She was only 29. The doctors said it was stress-related. Years of working too hard, not sleeping enough, not being able to afford health care. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." Rosa was placed in foster care. The system's trying to find her father, Maria's ex-husband, but he's nowhere to be found. She's been bouncing between homes. She's scared, angry, falling behind in school. And I've been thinking. Caroline paused, took a breath. "David and I have been talking about it. We want to petition for guardianship. We want to take her in." I sat back in my chair, stunned. That's a big decision. "I know. But Mom, if it weren't for you, if you hadn't taught me about sacrifice and showing up and putting someone else's needs first, I never would have taken Maria's case 5 years ago. And Maria got to spend 5 more years with her daughter because of that. She got to see Rosa start high school. She got to be there. And now, Rosa needs someone. And I can't look away." I looked at my daughter. This woman who'd once been so lost, she'd forgotten where she came from, who'd hurt me in ways I wasn't sure could be healed. And I saw someone I barely recognized. Not because she'd changed into someone unrecognizable, but because she'd become exactly who I'd always hoped she'd be. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Your support, your wisdom. David's parents are helping too, but Rosa needs a grandmother figure. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle. Someone who won't judge her for being angry or scared. Someone like you." I thought about my own father, dying slowly in that apartment above the bakery. About my choice to stay. About the life I'd given up and the life I'd built instead. About all the ways sacrifice had shaped me, hardened me in some places, softened me in others. "Of course," I said. "Of course I'll help." Rosa came to live with Caroline and David in October. It wasn't easy. She had nightmares. She skipped school. She screamed at Caroline during arguments, called her terrible things, accused her of trying to replace her mother. But Caroline didn't give up. She showed up every day, set boundaries, offered grace, stayed steady when Rosa couldn't be. And slowly, so slowly, Rosa began to heal. I saw her every Sunday at dinner. At first, she barely spoke. Just sat at the table, eating quietly, watching us with suspicious eyes. But gradually she started asking questions about sewing, about Poland, about what it was like when I was young. I told her stories about my father, about Frank leaving, about raising Caroline alone. I didn't make it sound romantic or easy. I told her the truth, that life is hard and unfair, and sometimes you don't get what you deserve. But you keep going anyway. You find people who love you. You do the next right thing. And eventually you wake up one day and realize you've built something worth keeping. One Sunday in December, Rosa asked if I could teach her to sew. I want to make something for Caroline, she said shyly. For Christmas, to say thank you. So I taught her, showed her how to thread the needle, how to make small, even stitches, how to be patient with the fabric and with herself. We made a set of pillowcases together, simple blue cotton with white piping. Nothing fancy, but every stitch was deliberate, intentional, made with care. On Christmas morning, Rosa gave them to Caroline, and Caroline cried. Not because they were perfect, they weren't. One hem was crooked, the piping puckered in places, but because they were made with love, and love, I've learned, covers a multitude of mistakes. I'm 63 years old now. It's June 1995. I'm sitting in the back row of Washtenaw County Circuit Court again. The same courtroom where I watched Caroline defend Maria Santos 18 years ago. But today, I'm watching something different. Rosa Santos Chen, now 24 years old, Caroline and David's adopted daughter, stands before Judge Morrison's successor, a younger man named Judge Williams. Rosa wears a navy suit I helped her make last month. Her hair is pulled back in a neat bun. Her hands don't shake. She's being sworn in as an attorney. She graduated from Michigan Law last month, the same school Caroline attended, the same school I once dreamed of attending. She passed the bar on her first try, and now she's joining Caroline's firm, which has grown from 3 lawyers to 10, focusing on family law and immigration cases. The judge asks Rosa to raise her right hand. Do you solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Michigan, and to faithfully discharge the duties of an attorney and counselor at law to the best of your ability? I do, Rosa says. Her voice is clear, strong. Congratulations, Ms. Chen. Welcome to the bar. The courtroom erupts in applause. Caroline is crying. David is beaming. And I'm sitting in the back row, my arthritic hands folded in my lap, thinking about how strange and beautiful it is, the way one choice ripples forward through time. I chose to stay for my father. That choice meant I never went to college, which meant I had to sew for a living, which meant I could afford to send Caroline to school, which meant she became a lawyer, which meant she defended Maria Santos, which meant Rosa had a chance at a different life, which meant she's standing here now, about to help people who have no one else to fight for them. All because I stayed. All because I chose love over my own dreams. I don't regret it. After the ceremony, we all go to lunch at Zingerman's. Our tradition now. Caroline, David, Rosa, Rosa's boyfriend, Marcus, and me. We crowd around a table in the corner, ordering too much food, talking over each other, laughing. Rosa shows me her bar card, the official one, with her photo and everything. She looks so proud. So should she be. Thank you, Grandma, she says quietly, when the others are distracted. For everything. I didn't do anything, I say. You did this. No, she shakes her head. You taught me how. You and Caroline. You taught me that where you come from doesn't determine where you're going. That mistakes don't define you. That there's always a chance to start over if you're brave enough to try. I squeeze her hand. You're going to do great things, Rosa. I'm going to try, she says. That's all any of us can do, right? Right. That evening, I drive home alone as the sun sets over Ann Arbor. The sky is painted in shades of pink and gold, and the radio plays an old hymn I remember from childhood. I hum along, my voice cracking on the high notes. When I get home, I make tea and sit at my sewing machine. It's the same Singer 401A I bought from the pawn shop 33 years ago. The motor's been replaced twice. The foot pedal squeaks. But it still runs. I have a project waiting. A christening gown for Mrs. Martinez's newest granddaughter. White cotton, hand-embroidered roses. The same pattern I've used 100 times. My hands ache as I work, but I don't mind. This is prayer. This is love made visible. As I sew, I think about the check I almost didn't send. The choice I almost made to let Caroline fall without a net. And I realize I was wrong. Not about holding her accountable. Not about teaching her that cruelty has consequences. But about thinking I had to choose between love and discipline. Between support and boundaries. The truth is you can do both. You can love someone fiercely and still let them stumble. You can forgive them without excusing them. You can offer second chances without pretending the first chance didn't hurt. That's what grace is. Not weakness, not looking the other way, but believing that people can become better than their worst moments. And then giving them the space to prove it. Caroline proved it. Rosa proved it. And maybe I proved it too. Proved that a woman who never got to finish her own education could still raise a lawyer. Proved that sacrifice isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of someone else's. The christening gown takes shape beneath my hands. Tiny stitches, almost invisible. But each one matters. Each one holds the fabric together. Each one is necessary, just like us. Just like the choices we make, the people we love, the quiet ways we show up for each other when no one's watching. I finish the last seam as the clock strikes 9. Stand up slowly, my back protesting. Look at the gown in the lamplight. It's not perfect, but it's good. It'll keep a baby warm. It'll mark a holy moment. It'll be passed down, maybe, to another generation. That's all I've ever wanted. To make something that lasts. To leave the world a little better than I found it. To raise a daughter who understands that we're all connected. That every choice we make, every kindness we offer, every sacrifice we accept, ripples outward in ways we might never see. I fold the gown carefully and set it by the door for pickup tomorrow. Then I turn off the lamp, say my evening prayers, the same ones I've said every night since I was a girl, and go to bed. Outside my window, the stars are just beginning to appear. One by one, pinpricks of light against the darkness. Each one small. Each one necessary. Each one shining. Just like us. Author's note. This story is dedicated to all the mothers who sacrifice in silence. To the seamstresses and the cleaners. The night shift workers and the invisible laborers who make everyone else's dreams possible. You are seen. You are valued. You are loved. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. Dart, Matthew 25:35. You're not even good enough to be their maid, my daughter said at her graduation, humiliating me in front of her friends' mothers. I simply replied, then they can pay for your things, and walked away, and she froze.